translation of Sahih Bukhari, Book 27, Minor Pilgrimage. Umra. Volume 3, Book 27, Number 1, narrated Abu Hurairah, Allah's Apostle said, the performance of Umrah is an expiation for the sins committed between it and the previous one, and the reward of Hajj Mabrur, the one accepted by Allah, is nothing except paradise. Number 2, narrated Ibn Jurayj, Ikrimah bin Khalid asked Ibn Umar about performing Umrah before Hajj. Ibn Umar replied, there is no harm in it. Ikrimah said, Ibn Umar also said, the Prophet had performed Umrah before performing Hajj. Number 4, narrated Mujahid, Ursa bin Zubair and I entered the mosque of the Prophet and saw Abdullah bin Umar sitting near the dwelling place of Aisha, and some people were offering the dua prayer. We asked him about their prayer and he replied that it was a heresy. Ursa then asked him how many times the Prophet had performed Umrah. He replied, 4 times. One of them was in the month of Rajab. We disliked to contradict him. Then we heard Aisha, the mother of faithful believers, cleaning her teeth with siwak in the dwelling place. Ursa said, O mother of the believers, don't you hear what Abu Abdurrahman is saying? She said, what does he say? Ursa said, he says that Allah's Apostle performed 4 Umrah and one of them was in the month of Rajab. Aisha said, may Allah be merciful to Abu Abdurrahman. The Prophet did not perform any Umrah except that he was with him, and he never performed any Umrah in Rajab. Number 5, narrated Ursa bin Zubair, I asked Aisha whether the Prophet had performed Umrah in Rajab. She replied, Allah's Apostle never performed any Umrah in Rajab. Number 6, narrated Qatada, I asked Anas how many times the Prophet had performed Umrah. He replied, 4 times. 1. Umrah of Hudaybiyah in Dhul-Qa'dah when the pagans hindered him. 2. Umrah in the following year in Dhul-Qa'dah after the peace treaty with him the pagans. 3. Umrah from Al-Jirana where he distributed the war booty. I think he meant the booty of the Battle of Hunayn. I asked, how many times did he perform Hajj? Anas replied, once. Number 7, narrated Qatada, I asked Anas about the Prophet's Umrah and he replied, the Prophet performed Umrah when the pagans made him return, an Umrah of Al-Hudaybiyah the next year, and another Umrah in Dhul-Qa'dah, and another Umrah in combination with his Hajj. Number 8, narrated Hammam, the Prophet performed 4 Umrah, 3 in Dhul-Qa'dah except the one Umrah which he performed with his Hajj, his Umrah from Al-Hudaybiyah, and the one of the following year, and the one from Al-Jirana where he distributed the booty of the Battle of Hunayn, and another Umrah with his Hajj. Number 9, narrated Abu Ishaq, I asked Masruq, Atta and Mujahid about the Umrah of Allah's Apostle. They said, Allah's Apostle had performed Umrah in Dhul-Qa'dah before he performed Hajj. I heard Al-Bara bin Azib saying, Allah's Apostle had performed Umrah in Dhul-Qa'dah twice before he performed Hajj. Number 10, narrated Atta, I heard Ibn Abbas saying, Allah's Apostle asked an Ansari woman Ibn Abbas named her but Atta forgot her name, what prevented you from performing Hajj with us? She replied, we have a camel and the father of so-and-so and his son that is her husband and her son rode it and left one camel for us to use for irrigation. He said to her, perform Umrah when Ramadan comes, for Umrah in Ramadan is equal to Hajj in reward, or said something similar. Number 11, narrated Aisha, we set out along with Allah's Apostle shortly before the appearance of the new moon crescent of the month of Dhul-Hijjah and he said to us, whoever wants to assume ihram for Hajj may do so. And whoever wants to assume ihram for Umrah may do so. Had not I brought the hadi, animal for sacrificing with me, I would have assumed ihram for Umrah. Aisha added, so some of us assumed ihram for Umrah while the others for Hajj. I was amongst those who assumed ihram for Umrah. The day of Arafat approached and I was still menstruating. I complained to the Prophet about that and he said, abandon your Umrah, undo and comb your hair, and assume ihram for Hajj. When it was the night of Hesba, he sent Abdurrahman with me to At-Tayyim and I assumed ihram for Umrah and performed it in lieu of my missed Umrah. Number 12, narrated Amr bin Aus, Abdul Rahman bin Abu Bakr told me that the Prophet had ordered him to let Aisha ride behind him and to make he perform Umrah from At-Tayyim. Number 13, narrated Jabir bin Abdullah, the Prophet and his companions assumed ihram for Hajj and none except the Prophet and Talha had the hadi with them. Ali had come from Yemen and he had the hadi with him. Ali said, I have assumed ihram with an intention like that of Allah's Apostle has assumed it. The Prophet ordered his companions to intend the ihram with which they had come for Umrah, to perform the tawaf of the Kaaba and between Safa and Marwa, to get their hair cut short and then to finish their ihram with the exception of those who had the hadi with them. They asked, shall we go to Mina and the private organs of some of us are dribbling if we finish ihram and have sexual relations with our wives? The Prophet heard that and said, had I known what I know now, I would not have brought the hadi. If I did not have the hadi with me I would have finished my ihram. Aisha got her menses and performed all the ceremonies of Hajj except the tawaf, so when she became clean from her menses, and she had performed the tawaf of the Kaaba, she said, O Allah's Apostle! You people are returning with both Hajj and Umrah and I am returning only with Hajj. So, he ordered Abdurrahman bin Abu Bakr to go with her to At-Tayyim. Thus she performed Umrah after the Hajj in the month of Dhul-Hijjah. Suraka bin Malik bin Jushaym met the Prophet at Al-Aqaba Jamrat al-Aqaba while the latter was stoning it and said, O Allah's Apostle! Is this permissible only for you? The Prophet replied, No, it is forever that is it is permissible for all Muslims to perform Umrah before Hajj. Number 14, narrated Aisha, we set out with Allah's Apostle shortly before the appearance of the new moon of Dhul-Hijjah and he said, whoever wants to assume ihram for Umrah may do so, and whoever wants to assume ihram for Hajj may do so. Had not I brought the hadi with me, I would have assumed ihram for Umrah. Some of the people assumed ihram for Umrah while others for Hajj. I was amongst those who had assumed ihram for Umrah. I got my menses before entering Mecca, and was menstruating till the day of Arafat. I complained to Allah's Apostle about it. He said, abandon your Umrah, undo and comb your hair, and assume ihram for Hajj. So, I did that accordingly. When it was the night of Hasb, the day of departure from Mina, the Prophet sent Abdurrahman with me to At-Tayyim. The sub-narrator adds Abdurrahman let her ride behind him. And she assumed ihram for Umrah in lieu of the abandoned one. Aisha completed her Hajj and Umrah, and no hadi, sadaqah charity, or fasting was obligatory for her. Number 15, narrated Al-Aswad, that Aisha said, O Allah's Apostle! The people are returning after performing the two nusuks that is Hajj and Umrah but I am returning with one only. He said, wait till you become clean from your menses and then go to At-Tayyim, assume ihram and after performing Umrah join us at such and such a place. But that is the reward if Umrah is according to your expenses or the hardship which you will undergo while performing it. Number 16, narrated Aisha, we set out assuming the ihram for Hajj in the months of Hajj towards the sacred precincts of Hajj. We dismounted at Sarif and the Prophet said to his companions, whoever has not got the hadi with him and likes to make it as Umrah, he should do it, but he who has got the hadi with him should not do it. The Prophet and some of his wealthy companions had the hadi with them, so they did not finish ihram after performing the Umrah. The Prophet came to me while I was weeping. He asked me the reason for it. I replied, I have heard of what you have said to your companions and I cannot do the Umrah. He asked me, what is the matter with you? I replied, I am not praying. He said, there is no harm in it as you are one of the daughters of Adam and the same is written for you as for others. So, you should perform Hajj and I hope that Allah will enable you to perform the Umrah as well. So, I carried on till we departed from Mina and halted at Al-Muhasab. The Prophet called Abdurrahman and said, go out of the sanctuary with your sister and let her assume ihram for Umrah, and after both of you have finished the tawaf I will be waiting for you at this place. We came back at midnight and the Prophet asked us, have you finished? I replied in the affirmative. He announced the departure and the people set out for the journey and some of them had performed the tawaf of the Kaaba before the morning prayer, and after that the Prophet set out for Medina. Number 17, narrated Safwan bin Ya'la bin Umayyah from his father who said, a man came to the Prophet while he was at Jirana. The man was wearing a cloak which had traces of colic or safra, a kind of perfume. The man asked the Prophet, what do you order me to perform in my Umrah?" So, Allah inspired the Prophet divinely and he was screened by a place of cloth. I wish to see the Prophet being divinely inspired. Umar said to me, "Come. Will you be pleased to look at the Prophet while Allah is inspiring him?" I replied in the affirmative. Umar lifted one corner of the cloth and I looked at the Prophet who was snoring. The sub-narrator thought that he said the snoring was like that of a camel. When that state was over, the Prophet asked, "Where is the questioner who asked about Umrah? Put off your cloak and wash away the traces of colic from your body and clean the safra yellow color and perform in your Umrah what you perform in your Hajj, that is the tawaf round the Kaaba and the sa'i between Safa and Marwa." Number 18, narrated Hisham ibn Urwa from his father who said, "While I was a youngster, I asked Aisha the wife of the Prophet, 'What about the meaning of the statement of Allah? Verily, the mountains as Safa and Al-Marwa are among the symbols of Allah. So, it is not harmful if those who perform Hajj or Umrah of the house Kaaba at Mecca to perform the going tawaf between them?' Quran 2 verse 158. I understand from that there is no harm if somebody does not perform the tawaf between them." Aisha replied, "No, for if it were as you are saying, then the recitation would have been like this: it is not harmful not to perform tawaf between them." This verse was revealed in connection with the answer who used to assume the ihram for the idol manat which was put beside a place called Qudayd, and those people thought it not right to perform the tawaf of as-Safa and al-Marwa. When Islam came, they asked Allah's apostle about that, and Allah revealed, "Verily, the mountains as Safa and al-Marwa are among the symbols of Allah. So, it is not harmful of those who perform Hajj or Umrah of the house Kaaba at Mecca to perform the going tawaf between them." Quran 2 verse 158. Sufyan and Abu Muawiyah added from Hisham from Aisha, "The Hajj or Umrah of the person who does not perform the going tawaf between as-Safa and al-Marwa is incomplete in Allah's sight." Number 19, narrated Ismail, Abdullah bin Abu Awfa said, "Allah's apostle performed Umrah and we too performed Umrah along with him. When he entered Mecca he performed the tawaf of Kaaba and we too performed it along with him, and then he came to the as-Safa and al-Marwa, that is performed the sa'i, and we also came to them along with him. We were shielding him from the people of Mecca lest they may hit him with an arrow." A friend of his asked him, that is Abdullah bin Awfa, "Did the Prophet enter the Kaaba during that Umrah?" He replied in the negative. Then he said, "What did the Prophet say about Khadija?" He Abdullah bin Awfa said, "He said, give Khadija the good tidings that she will have a palace made of kasab in paradise and there will be neither noise nor any trouble in it." Number 20, narrated Amr bin Dinar, "We asked Ibn Umar whether a man who had performed the tawaf of the Kaaba but had not performed the tawaf between as-Safa and al-Marwa yet, was permitted to have sexual relation with his wife. He replied, "The Prophet arrived at Mecca and circumambulated the Kaaba 7 times and then offered a 2-rakat prayer behind Maqam Ibrahim and then performed the going tawaf between as-Safa and al-Marwa 7 times, and verily, in Allah's apostle you have a good example." And we asked Jabir bin Abdullah the same question and he replied, "He should not go near her till he has finished the going tawaf between as-Safa and al-Marwa." Number 21, narrated Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, "I came to the Prophet at al-Batha while his camel was kneeling down and he asked me, 'Have you intended to perform the Hajj?' I replied in the affirmative. He asked me, 'With what intention have you assumed ihram?' I replied, 'I have assumed ihram with the same intention as that of the Prophet.' He said, 'You have done well. Perform the tawaf of the Kaaba and the sa'i between as-Safa and al-Marwa and then finish the ihram.' So, I performed the tawaf around the Kaaba and the sa'i between as-Safa and al-Marwa and then went to a woman of the tribe of Qais who cleaned my head from lice. Later I assumed the ihram for Hajj. I used to give the verdict of doing the same till the caliphate of Umar, who said, 'If you follow the holy book then it orders you to remain in the state of ihram till you finish from Hajj. If you follow the Prophet then he did not finish his ihram till the hadi sacrifice had reached its place of slaughtering Hajj al-Qur'an.'" Number 22, narrated Al-Aswad, Abdullah the slave of Asma bin Abu Bakr, told me that he used to hear Asma, whenever she passed by Al-Hajjan, saying, "May Allah bless his apostle Muhammad." Once we dismounted here with him. and at that time we were traveling with light luggage. We had a few riding animals and a little food ration. I, my sister, Aisha, Azubair and such persons performed Umrah, and when we had passed our hands over the Kaaba, that is performed Tawaf round the Kaaba and between As-Safa and Al-Marwa, we finished our Al-Ihram. Later on we assumed Ihram for Hajj the same evening. Number 23, narrated Abdullah bin Umar, whenever Allah's Apostle returned from a Ghazwa, Hajj or Umrah, he used to say takbir thrice at every elevation of the ground and then would say, "None has the right to be worshipped but Allah. He is one and has no partner. All the kingdoms is for Him, and all the praises are for Him, and He is omnipotent. We are returning with repentance, worshipping, prostrating, and praising our Lord. He has kept up His promise and made His slave victorious, and He alone defeated all the clans of non-believers." Number 24, narrated Ibn Abbas, when the Prophet arrived at Mecca, some boys of the tribe of Bani Abdul Muttalib went to receive him, and the Prophet made one of them ride in front of him and the other behind him. Number 25, narrated Ibn Umar, whenever Allah's Apostle left for Mecca, he used to pray in the mosque of Ash-Shajra, and when he returned to Medina, he used to pray in the middle of the valley of Dhul Hulayfa and used to pass the night there till morning. Number 26, narrated Anas, the Prophet never returned to his family from a journey at night. Number 28, narrated Humayd, Anas said, whenever Allah's Apostle returned from a journey, he, on seeing the high places of Medina, would make his she-camel proceed faster. And if it were another animal, even then he used to make it proceed faster. Narrated Humayd that the Prophet used to make it proceed faster out of his love for Medina. Number 29, narrated Anas, as above, but mentioned the walls of Medina instead of the high places of Medina. Al-Harith bin Umar agrees with Anas. Number 30, narrated Abu Ishaq, I heard Al-Bara saying, the above verse was revealed regarding us, for the answer on returning from Hajj never entered their houses through the proper doors but from behind. One of the answer came and entered through the door and he was taunted for it. Therefore, the following was revealed. It is not righteousness that you enter the houses from the back, but the righteous man is he who fears Allah, obeys His order and keeps away from what He has forbidden, so, enter houses through the proper doors. Quran 2 verse 189. Number 31, narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, traveling is a kind of torture as it prevents one from eating, drinking and sleeping properly. So, when one's needs are fulfilled, one should return quickly to one's family. Number 32, narrated Zayd bin Aslam from his father, I was with Ibn Umar on the way to Mecca, and he got the news that Safiya bin Abu Ubaid was seriously ill. So, he hastened his pace, and when the twilight disappeared, he dismounted and offered the Maghrib and Isha prayers together. Then he said, I saw that whenever the Prophet had to hasten when traveling, he would delay the Maghrib prayer and join them together, that is, offered the Maghrib and the Isha prayers together.